Welcome to the EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Thriti Rai, Assistant Professor in the Department of Museology, University of Calcutta. Today we will learn about the museum architecture. This is an important area for the study of museology and about the museum. To understand museum and to study well about the museum, we need to know its architecture, because the architecture attracts people into the museum. So for us it's very important to understand, to study architecture very vividly. So in this module, this is the main objectives of this study are to understand the architectural requirement of a museum building as a custodian of heritage, to understand the visitor's need and facilities required, to know utilization of space for collection management, including new arrival, display and in store and its safekeeping, and also to know the space allocation for the support services of the museum, both technical and administration as well as educational. To study and to know about the museum architecture, you can go through the various books are available. You can go through the New Museum Architecture and Display. This is one book. Another book you can go through, that is the Museum Building, then Museum Space, Museum Architecture and Interior Design, and Museum Basics. These are the available books that you can follow to understand about the museum architecture. If you go deep into the museum architecture deals with different purposes of building in respect to its collection, administration and public interest. It is based on the need for collection, preservation and display of museum objects to make it accessible to the visitors. It also depends on the public access to museum, visitor space for amenities and the entire space for administrative work. In a museum, visitors go in their leisure time. So they want to see the objects, they want to enjoy, they want to entertain, they want to relax. So for all these purposes, museum need to maintain or manage a good space where they can enjoy their whole day. To understand about the museum and this study, the aim of architecture of museum is to encourage people to visit museum, discovery of object, learning and enjoyment. You know that people love to visit those museums which looks very good. The building is very nice and attractive. Like Victoria Memorial in Kolkata is a very palacious building. The monument itself attracts people. And in case of Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum, Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya in Mumbai, that building also attracts people and people love to visit that building also. So along with the object, building also matters to visitors. So it should provide sufficient safe environment for collection, both in store and display as well as in temporary exhibition. For the security purpose also, the building is very much important so that it can preserve well the antique and rare objects. It should allow different uses of space like administration, conservation, public functioning, and also to provide basic requirement or the basic amenities for the visitors. So keeping in the mind, we divide the museum space in a few segment, keeping in the mind our requirement. So in this way, museum developed in a three ways in India and also in abroad, where museum development of museum initiate in a specific structure or museum established in a already established structure. So in this way we can categorize museum architecture in three different parts. One is museum housed in specially designed building, that is where the building is developed or the constructed keeping in the mind the requirement of the object of that museum. Second case, where the museum is established or housed in a heritage building. So here the option of alteration is less, where the importance of building is the prime, and according to the space, availability of the space, the object need to be displayed. Apart from these two categories, one more category is also there, that is the open air museum, where we display objects in open air, where the enclosed surrounding is immaterial to us, where the environment is more concerned for the displayed objects. So if you look into the museum housed in the specially designed building, you will find lot of buildings, such building in India. These buildings are constructed mainly to shape according to the shape and size of the museum object. Like if the museum has a very big or gigantic paintings or gigantic fossils, like the fossil of dinosaur, so in that case they need to design that building in a very bigger shape. So depending on the nature of object and the size of object, structure of the building varies. Regarding the composition of the object, the museum building also need to plan, like where the organic object is more, where the inorganic object is more. So keeping in the safety and security of the object, museum structures are designed accordingly. So in this way, you will see very beautiful museum buildings in India, like one Albert Hall Museum that is specially designed to house the European painting, colonial sculptures, marble statues, one mummy is there. So to house all these all these objects, a very beautiful designed building has constructed and named as the Albert Hall Museum in Jaipur. Again, if you see the Science Center or the other museum which display the interactive objects based on the functioning and the services of the museum, the museum building or the architecture of the building are decided. Like if the science centers are generally exhibited the participatory exhibits. Participatory exhibits means the one exhibits where lot of people will operate. So for every exhibit we need a quite big or sufficient space. So for that these buildings are designed with a lot of space, where the mobility of visitors, they can feel comfortable while operating the exhibits. So in this case, the structure and architecture for science or science centers are quite different than the other historic museum or the painting galleries or the portrait galleries. So depending on the aims and objectives of the museum, the vision and mission of the museum, architecture of the buildings are decided. Again, if you look into the museum housed in a heritage building, there the building were already constructed. So according to the available space, a museum authority has to decide where they will put their big object, where they will put the small object, where they will demonstrate the palace portion, so mural paintings, all they have to decide according to the availability of space. arrangement of the space for is very much limited. So here the design is again different than the museum is the building constructed specially for the museum. So in this case you will see there are so many palaces, very heritage building or the birthplace of eminent persons. Here options are very much less. In case of palaces, the exhibit are placed in the available spaces, protected by some corridors or some railings. So the design, the architecture is varies from one mode to another mode. Regarding the biographic museums, where the museum is housed in the residential house of a person, there you will see the corridors are very narrow, mobility of visitors could be very restricted. So in that case, some alteration of the wall or the space are generated to modify the internal structure of the building. Like some wall, they replace it by the glass, so that it is done in case of Indira Gandhi Memorial Museum in New Delhi. So in this case, need to alter the existing building to suit the requirement and the purpose or the demand of the visitors as well as the need of the exhibit. So again, in case of a museum housed in a if you housed in a already heritage building, we need to keep in the mind the safety and security of the object, because these buildings are very old. We need to develop more conservation measures and exhibit displayed on the available space. Sometimes we may not modify. So in that case, the museum sometimes had to compromise with the available spaces. These are all about the museum within the closed boundary or the in-house museum. So there are two categories of museum. One is established within the already established building or the heritage building, and one category is where the museum building is totally constructed keeping in the mind of the need of the exhibits. Indian Museum in Kolkata is also like that, where the building is designed keeping in the mind the essential space for each exhibit. Other than these two varieties, another important structure or the museum architecture is the open air museum. Nowadays, there are so many open air museums in India and also in abroad. In case of open air museum, the architecture needs are to create a natural environment to place exhibit, arranging an easy access to visitors so that they can feel exhibit in terms of its natural habitat. Natural habitat means like the museum authority need to recreate a village. Village means the dwelling house, the farming areas, the area for their pets or their domestic animals, the irrigation system. These are in case of ethnographic open air museum. In case of other museums like architectural museum, they need to define in different way. So in case of open air museum in a ethnographic, for the ethnographic object or the anthropological object, the best example is the Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya in Bhopal, where the museum is established in a huge area where the actual dwelling house, the village pattern are recreated in their actual habitat structure, where people had to explore or the trail in the different villages within the museum. So it's a very big museum. One is restricted in a one corner and scattered different tribes. The habitat of different tribes are scattered in different spaces. So this is one mode of exhibiting or the museum architecture for any ethnographic museum or anthropological museum. In case of architectural open air museum, these are the monuments or sites. Here we cannot alter the site because site is more important, like the caves, like monuments, the excavated area. These are also open air museum, we considered it as a museum, but here the main exhibit we cannot alter. So what we need to do, we need to make a proper way of entering and exit for visitors. So we need to make a railing. So here the arrangement is different. We need to make proper access for the visitors so that they can enjoy and know about the different archaeological monuments. So these are about the different structure of architectural structure available in for the museums in India. Theoretically, if you consider how we can plan museum architecture, so here we need to maintain some basic rules. What are those? These are the basic requirement, the basic element of museum architecture is the museum building and museum surrounding. Museum building is an in-house portion where people will go to see the object, and museum surrounding is the activity area and where people can get rest, sit for some time, get entertainment, and or in other case museum can arrange some open air program like sit and draw program, temporary exhibition. Lot of activities nowadays museum are planning for visitors in this museum surrounding or within the museum campus area. So we have to keep in the mind that a museum should have a good surrounding area where they can perform their services as well as they can give facilities to the visitors along with their parkings. So in this way, museum architecture has the two basic elements. One is museum building and another is museum surrounding. In case of building, we again divide the area in a certain formula. These are the reception and visitors facility should be restricted within the 25% area of entire area. The collection and storage should occupy 25%. Display and exhibit should occupy 25%, and support services like administrative services that will occupy 25%. These are the rule of designing a museum architecture so that visitors can enjoy the service, administrator can perform their job, objects can be placed very well, display area should be sufficient for the visitors. So this is the rule or formula for designing a museum. Again, in the public space can be defined as the public service area and the collection area. Service area means where they means visitors can move freely, other than museum galleries where they can participate in various museum activities and also enjoy its various services. And the collection area, it means galleries which are permanent and the galleries for the temporary exhibition, and the area for library and visitors and other visitors' interest. So this is the one public area. And collection and storage area means museum displays only 1/3 of its collection. So rest of 2/3 objects they need to store in a proper position, and these stores cannot be viewed. They should be in such a location within the museum building so that it cannot be viewed easily by any visitors. It should be in some place that is out of normal view of the visitors. And similarly, the support service area should be in such place, such area of the museum building where public access is very much restricted and nobody can see this is the office of curator, this is the office of director, like that. So this is the out of the view of other visitors or the simple visitors. In case of public service, we again think about the various stages like visitors entrance. Visitors entrance is very much important because this is the point where visitors get into the museum. They need to wait for some time for purchase of ticket and checking, facility keeping their luggages in a cloakroom. So this is the orientation area. So the gate or the entrance gate of a museum should be very wide. If you can see the entrance gate of Science City Kolkata, it is very wide. And so that, and the gates, there should be a number of gates, so that in case of long queues, people can shift in other can stand in separate queue, because a queue should be devoted or this fixed for the school student. One should be there for a senior citizen. One should be there for the woman if she is alone. So like that, museum can plan about the entrance of visitors. So entrance is the point of where the relation between the museum and the visitors starts. So this should be very warm, where people can feel better before entering the museum, and there should not be any hassles and bustles for the visitors. Again, after entering the gate, the reception desk, the first point where visitors meet with the museum staff, is the reception desk. This should be this place should be spacious so that receptionists should deal properly with the visitors, can give the answer better to the visitors, and there should be one or place for one or two receptionists so that they can handle better the visitors. And every museum has cloakroom where visitors can keep their big belongings. So cloakroom should be placed near the entrance gate before the starting of the galleries. And after that there should be a orientation space, because in certain museum, gallery guide escorts some group of people. So in that case, they need a orientation space where they can orient visitors before entering the galleries. So these are the requirement prerequisite before the galleries, and while planning museum architecture, architect must keep in the mind of all those things. Again, after visiting the galleries, there should be an assembly area where visitors can meet with their relatives or friends, can sit for a while, can assemble and take rest after viewing so many galleries. So museum should plan a space as an assembly area. For amenities of the visitors, museum should arrange plenty of toilet facility or refreshment room facilities in every floor or in a convenient location, which is easily accessible to the visitors. Other than these facilities and the rooms, a museum should have an audiovisual room where they can display their films in a multimedia presentation. This is the new trend in every museum, where every museum is trying to provide a overall glimpses about the museum or on a specific gallery or on a specific object or on a specific discovery. So this is a very prime area, and every museum should think to make this kind of audiovisual room within the museum building. Other than this, there should be an activity room. Activity room where museum can organize workshops, training, or the program for children or students or the artist. So every museum runs this kind of program, so they need such kind of activity room where they can accommodate about 50 to 100 participants, where they can sit and draw or whatever thing they can wish to do, or museum like to plan accordingly their theme of work or their calendar work. In addition to this, museum should have one exhibition space to conduct the temporary exhibition. It should be in-house within the museum building structure, where they can, because organizing temporary exhibition is a regular activity of every museum. If museum is wish to develop, they can construct an auditorium also to perform its various seminars, cultural program, lectures, etc. These are the things which a modern museum nowadays is required. Another thing is very much important, to make or construct a sales counter. Sales counter should be in such a place where visitors are exiting from the museum. So after visiting the museum, they may plan to purchase some art objects or as a memento or souvenir on the museum. So there should be a good sales counter in the museum, and where they can museum can sell their objects. In addition, to maintain everything, museum has a strong security line. So to watch everything, so museum need a good security office where they can plan CCTV setup, and for this also museum need a centrally space but out of the view of normal visitors, and this is also a requirement for museum architecture. All these are the part of architecture which deals about the public service, other than the collection, other than the galleries. Now come to the public space of collection. Regarding the collection, collection means the galleries. A museum, we mainly look the long galleries where so many objects are kept for display, or the exhibits are placed. So display objects can be viewed by visitors comfortably, accessible easily with adequate orientation space for all visitors, including physically challenged visitors. There should be provision for sufficient natural light whenever applicable, well protected from paste, direct effect of moisture and heat, as well as theft and burglary. So while planning a gallery, we need to keep in account that there should be the good or accessible to all visitors, including challenged visitor. The rooms should be quite safe for every object in terms of security, in terms of paste, in terms of conservation measures and light facility. So these are about the galleries where people come to see objects and where lot of security need to maintain by the museum administrator. Other than the collection or the galleries, museums should have a library where willing visitors can refer about the objects, refer various books, various journals. So there should be a accessible library which is well directed, so that any visitors can get easy approach to the library, and library should be well accommodated, well, the place should be, sitting place should be sufficient for each visitors. So these are the two main things about the collection. Other than this, there should be space for storage. Storage means the object storage, storage of documents, storage of other archival materials. So in case of museum, there are so many things that they need to store properly with full maintaining full safety and security. Collection storage means it should not be viewed by common people, but must be near the respective gallery for easy access of staff to facilitate transport of object whenever required. It should be constructed in such a way that fulfill the basic safety and needs. So this is about the storage of object. In other cases, museum also need to store archival material. Archival materials means paper documents, the various photographs. So for that they need proper chest or shelves where can be placed properly. And exhibition storage item, they also need space for this, like construction material, that the frames, the light that they regularly need for any temporary exhibitions. So for all this, the museum needs a storage facility. Apart from this, public access, this storage, the another function that is the administrative function. For this, museum need to plan a separate space, allocate a separate space, like for administration and management, there should be room for curatorial office, the finance office, database management office for the database management, for marketing people, for human resource, the cleaning and maintenance. For every department, museum should have rooms, sufficient rooms from where these people can work comfortably. And in addition, a big museum must have a modeling unit. Modeling unit means where museum develop their souvenir item or the fabricated object or fabricated of real object, because in many cases real objects are not kept in permanent display. In case of gold coin, in case of very precious item, museum place the fabricated object. So for that, in addition to real object, or in case of display also, museum need to create some fabricated objects and need a modeling unit. So for modeling of object, they need a quite a laboratory kind of space or the workshop kind of space where new exhibit can be developed. So this is another requirement for a museum architecture. In addition to the modeling room, each and every museum has a photography room. Photographs, why it is needed? Photography is the important part of object documentation. So a museum has a very elaborate photographic unit. For this, they also need a dark room, they need a room, the office room, they also need to preserve these negatives, or the digitally they need, nowadays it is kept digitally. So for the entire operation, they also need space. And in the architectural part, this is another component. And in addition to that, museum should have a conservation laboratory. For big museum, there you will find a very big conservation laboratory. Sometimes a floor also occupied by a conservation laboratory. So this is a very important need of a museum to develop a conservation laboratory. It also sometimes it is there are more than 2-3 conservation laboratory, like laboratory for inorganic object, laboratory for organic objects. So as per the need, museum develops these laboratories. And while designing a museum, so architecture also need to plan for the space for this conservation laboratory. Publication office. Publication means museums need to develop posters, leaflets, banners. Again, they need a separate space for that. And this is sometimes a printing machine. Some big museum also had the printing unit also. So for the entire thing, for this unit, the museum needs a separate space. Now, air conditioning is a prime requirement for any organization. So, while planning a museum building, it is very important to keep in the mind the placement of air conditioning plant. Generally, it kept outside the museum building or a very other place, very safe place. That space should be included in the planning of the museum architecture. These were the all about the museum architecture or the museum building architecture that deals with all this matter. Apart from the building, there are the space, that is the surrounding the museum building, that the museum surrounding. This space is very much important for the visitor circulation, for organizing various programs. So for a good architecture of building, museums should design a good surrounding also, because you will find in case of many art galleries, they have a very big surrounding, and where the outdoor objects can be placed, where many art objects can be developed, like in case of National Gallery of Modern Art, they have a very big exhibit that they place outdoor. So in the garden, so the garden must be there for the aesthetic value. And in case of many museum like National Museum, New Delhi, they also exhibit many objects outside their building where visitors sits in the garden. So for that thing, museum surrounding must be spacious, where visitors can wait and museum can display many objects that they can display safely in the outdoor space. Other than the display and the sitting area, sometimes during the winter or during the dry season, museum plan many activities outside their museum. Like Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum in Mumbai, they organize lot of programs outside their building within the museum garden. So here, for planning such activities like for the children, for any special group of visitors, museum need a quite big space. So for this open air activity, a space should be allocated, or space should be there where all the visitors can sit comfortably, and museum can also organize their function properly. In addition, there should be space for parking, and this is the very much nowadays is in demand, that there should be a parking within the museum area. so to give the access to the visitors so that they can keep their vehicle comfortably and can enjoy the whole day inside the museum. So parking facility should be there in the museum premises. And apart from there, another thing is the garage space for museum vehicle, because many museums have mobile exhibition unit, that is museum on wheel. So like that vehicle or the very transport unit or the way buses or the other vehicles, museum for their personal use, museum also need a garage space. So here is a typical architecture planning of a museum. So look into the picture and you will find that space, how a museum building is defined, is planned, along with the garden, with the circulation area, the toilet facilities, space for you can get the vivid an idea about the entire arrangement, the auditorium space from this picture. So a museum is a public building where people come in their leisure time. The architecture of the museum should be designed, or pre-existed heritage building should be modified in such a way where all the objects should be accommodated perfectly and must give people comfort with satisfaction. For museum personnel, it should such a space where they can display and store all kinds of objects appropriately, work satisfactorily, and can enhance their creativity perfectly. It is a skill of the architect to balance the needs, utilizing fully the available space. The space should be such where museum can perform all its regular functions and services, maintaining necessary administrative and management procedure, not in a small room in dark, but in the blood and veins of the specially designed museum architecture. So these are the basics about the museum architecture. If you want to go through in detail, you please visit to the website of the PG Pathshala, where you can get the detail about this presentation and this study. Thank you.